Why is it that in this day and age there seems to be a great lack of meaning, great lack of purpose, and a drive towards hedonism, towards instant gratification, towards numbing the senses? I think it is for one reason, and that is people not doing that which they know they should do. That is my personal definition of virtue. And I think everybody knows what they need to do. Deep down inside, if you ask somebody, what is it that you want to do with your life? Within, 3 seconds, they will say something, you know, and if it's the thing that they are not doing, they will proceed by giving all the reasons why they can't, why it makes no sense, why they shouldn't. And I mean, typically it's a money issue. Money is just seems like to everybody the pure obstacle of going after the things that they want in life. But it's more than just the money issue. It's Stephen Pressfield talks about the resistance. It's also the resistance that we feel when we go after something that is meaningful to us. To a certain, sometimes it feels like when you're following the right journey, when you're on your soul's path, it feels good. You get out of a depression and it feels good, it feels right. But if you follow it for long enough, if you stick through uncertainty long enough, the resistance will eventually bubble up and it will be hard to continue. You will get to a point where, you'll either have to surpass your limits or your journey will end there and you'll regret it for the rest of your life. You'll be a what if person. You'll say, I could have been so much. And you'll try to build a life to suppress those feelings. You'll build a life of wealth, of comfort, of love, and you'll say it was all worth it, and it all worked out in the end. But deep down inside, you'll know there's a neurosis there. There's a suffering of the soul that never leaves you. There's a void that's always empty inside of you. And I think, that's the problem that we have, the meaning problem in this day and age. And pleasure has always been, I think, the pleasure for the sake of pleasure, hedonism for the sake of hedonism has always been the obstacle to the meaningful life, has always been the obstacle to, delayed gratification, to putting in long hours, doing hard work to obtain good or to obtain results that can only come from hard, intense work of delayed gratification. And in this day and age, I think, well, the point I'm really trying to make is I think that it's clear how there's a meaning crisis. If these are the things that give you meaning, delaying, not giving into pleasure for the sake of pleasure, denying your instant gratification for delayed gratification, for something valuable, for something deep and meaning inside of you, to not worry about the money, to not worry about the what society will think of you. In this day and age, those things are more prevalent than ever. It's easier than ever to get pleasure. It's easier than ever to just waste a day scrolling, doing nothing. We are asked to do less and less for more and more money. I heard recently that, in school they're no longer pushing people to to be uncomfortable in gym class, to be uncomfortable in the classroom. They are just making it a comfort paradise, hedonistic pleasure seeking place, which there's no growth in that. And it makes so much sense when you put those together why we are in an age of a lack of meaning. When no one even knows, when so many people know what they want to do, but they would have to sacrifice so much pleasure to go after it. They can't get their get their head out of their ass for more than a day to actually pursue what they want. It's too hard. It's too challenging. It seems like it's too uncomfortable. This seems like too much suffering. It's a journey that risk them losing their ignorance, and in turn losing their bliss, and in turn living a life not true to themselves, and not becoming that which they were meant to be, and not showing the world or giving the world their gifts and making the world a better place for doing so. We live in a day and age where it's easier than ever to just become a millionaire, to just pursue the path of money and do whatever makes the most money, and say whatever to your vocation, to say whatever to what you want to do with your life. And it's easier than ever to just pursue pleasure and to numb out those bad feelings. I have a bad feeling, my soul is revolting inside of me because of the path that I am on. Let me go do drugs. Let me go watch porn. Let me go give into a, fill in the blank pleasure for the sake of pleasure and numb that out a bit. Forget that. Let me go out this weekend. I know I should be working on that thing this weekend to get me out of the job that I don't really like, but I'm not going to do it. So might as well go out, you know, get pleasure, numb my senses, numb my brain, and tell myself at the end of the day I had no time, that I needed work-life balance, that it was the only thing that makes my 9 to 5 bearable is the going out on the weekend, living for the weekend. This these ideas, that notion is just so horrible. And I mean, as I've said multiple times, it's just so clear to me now, so obvious now, why we are in such an age of lack of meaning. Because there's so many incentives. It's harder than ever to pursue that which your soul is demanding you to pursue. There's more distractions than ever. Deep work is harder than ever. There is, in the past, maybe whatever you chose to do, you were going to be, a peasant in poverty anyways. So at least you could pursue what you wanted to pursue. But nowadays there's this fine line of, you can become a business owner, a lawyer, or you could start drop shipping, or you could just do start a bunch of side hustles, start your own business, you know, have, start rebuilding houses, start doing all these things. That is just so, I don't want to say easy because it's hard work, but it's solely a path of money. It's solely a path of financial. That's all it's for. It's for financial. And their your vocation just seems less and less appealing when you think about how much work it will take, when you think about how potentially little worth it'll be in the end, of how potentially it might not work out and you'll have to work a job you don't like. There's just, the incentives are just not there. But that is why so many people, live lives of quiet desperation, as Henry David Thoreau says, because they told those dreams to die. They've told the soul to shut up, and they just go through the motions day in and day out, doing what they're supposed to do. Making money, providing, having a family, enjoying the weekends, watching TV, doing whatever they do. And at the end of the day, if you ask them, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you wish that you did? They'll all have something to say. And the ones who don't are the truly happy people, are the people with meaning. I talk about happiness a lot on this channel. And to me, happiness is meaning, purpose. It's not a joy, it's a way of life. It's something that you achieve. And you can call it happiness, you can call it meaning, But to me, meaning is happiness, and happiness is meaning. Meaning is peace, and peace is happiness. And they're all one and the same. You can't have one without the other. But I really wanted to make this video to just get the point across that it's not easy to pursue that which you know you must pursue, to do that which you know you must do. To me, that is virtue, and to me, that is the only way to live a life of meaning, is to do that which you know you should do. We all know what we should do, whether that be for work, whether that be what time we need to get up in the morning, how many days a week we need to go to the gym, if we need to start going to the gym, if we need to start eating healthy. All these things we know we need to do, but pleasure is the enemy of these things. Pleasure is the enemy of virtue. And it's just so clear. We're just not building a society. I think we should, I've thought a lot about, the quality and the quantity of life. And, we're so focused on improving the quantity of life. We live longer than ever before. We're trying to go multiplanetary. But has the quality of life not diminished immensely? And it's, yes, we live on a planet with better than it's ever been. You know, in very few countries, there's people getting burned by the stake because they think they're witches, or, you know, there's slavery is, not as much as it used to be. Wars aren't as vast as they once were. Yes, all these things still are there, but in everything considered, we live in the most humane era ever. And that's saying a lot because there's still much evil out there. But there's obviously something amazing about this modern day and age, but it has clearly neglected the soul. It's clearly neglected the individual, the quality of this person's life. Instead of making a life that feels like it was long, we're making lives that feel like they're short, even though by number they are longer. Seneca says life is life is not short. We just waste a lot of it. And I think in this day and age, we live longer than ever, but at the same time, we live shorter lives than ever. You see so many people, I think, if you just zone out and zog out for, a few months, it's just like the year's almost gone. And you think, what have I done? You know, you slept in every day, you were on your phone for hours, you went to a job you didn't really like, you just went through the motions, you didn't really try to excel at the job. You were at no risk of getting fired, but you weren't trying to push the needle at your job or outside of your job and your vocation and the thing you really wanted to do. You just numbed your senses. You spent Friday night and Saturday night. You spent Friday night, going out to wake up. You wake up in the afternoon on Saturday to go out Saturday night, to wake up in the afternoon to go to bed on Sunday to do it all over again. And, you do that 4 times and a month goes by. You do that, you can repeat that cycle 12 more times and that's a year. And you don't know where it went. You don't really remember much of it. And you're nowhere closer to your vocation. You're nowhere closer to becoming wiser, to becoming smarter, to being a blessing to society. And I don't blame individual people for this. I mean, yes, it's everyone has to take their own individual responsibility, but I recognize in myself how hard it is, and I recognize that this day and age is not making it easy. This day and age where, you know, I've I don't have social media, but a lot of the times I feel left out for that reason. I don't know what's going on, and who my friends know all of these things about. They're up to date on certain things, and they have conversations about it, and this new show on Netflix and this, that, and the other. And I'm glad I'm not in the know, because I think it's trivial. And I only would say I have a few real friends, and they don't really do that stuff anyways. But the other people, I don't really have many people to talk to, because who knows who know who what 22, 23 year old knows who Thomas Aquinas is, who's read St. Augustine, who's read Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Carl Jung, Freud. I mean, you just look at the books behind me. I mean, who do I really have to talk to about this stuff? And I don't blame this day and age, as I said. I don't blame the people. I blame this day and age, because that stuff's not. You want to sit down and read a book when you could just get a bunch of dopamine and pleasure from scrolling. You know, it was only it just myself just bursted out of me at some point, because of how much I couldn't bear to do this trivial things anymore. And I don't blame people who haven't got to that point yet. But I do understand that it's hard. But it's way harder to not live a life true to yourself. It's way harder. And you'll realize that once you take the step into living a life true to yourself. But the dangerous thing about that is you will never go back. You can never be naive again. You can never be ignorant again. You can never do those things you used to do that gave you pleasure, because you'll beat yourself up for doing them. You can never do those things again. And it's amazing in one way, and it's sad and lonely in another way. And not a lot of people will understand you, because I say, I'm speaking on the modern day and age, but it's always been this way. It's, nothing new under the sun. Everything is just reoccurring and reoccurring. And it's always been hard to pursue your soul's calling. It's always been hard to do that which you should do. It's always been hard to be virtuous. Virtue has never been convenient in any day and age. Just because it may be less convenient than ever doesn't mean it used to be convenient. And it's always been this way. There's always been, the greats were always not like the people in their time. Leonardo da Vinci, Jesus, Confucius, Buddha, I mean, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau. These people, all things considered, were weird. They were so much different than everybody else, and they were people truly following the calling of their soul, and they found great meaning in that. They found great joy. Joy is a bad word, because joy is just an emotion. They found great tranquility in just meaning and just pursuing that which they know they should do. Seneca has his essay on the happy life, and he said virtue is the only thing you need for the happy life, the life of meaning. I say happiness because I read so much text from antiquity where happiness didn't mean what it means today. It meant eudaimonium, it meant fulfillment, it meant meaning. And that's what Seneca says, and I believe he's so right. The happy life is only the life where it is lived doing that which it knows it should do. If you know you should do something and you do the opposite, you are not happy. You are wretched. You are killing your soul. You're degrading your soul. And your soul can only take so much of this. Your soul can only take so much. Because soon you'll have to return it. And you'll never have another chance again to purify it. And that's strictly with doing that which you know you should do. And, this isn't easy. This is not easy. In search of listening to the voice, I quit my job recently. And, I thought it was the final step into my destiny. I thought it was the step onto the path that would just be a straight line to my destiny. And I realized it was actually just the first leap into uncertainty, into difficulty, into truly putting oneself to the test and putting yourself in a position to where it's harder to do what you know you should do. You have more time at your disposal and more chance for vice. You have more chance to fall. You have more chance to talk yourself out, to let the resistance win. And that's what I've been dealing with. But I see now, every time I fall, every time I fail, every time I do that which I know I should not do, how much it hurts my soul, how much it pushes me away from being that person which I know I need to become, how much harder it is to just be happy, to just have meaning, to just feel like life's going to work out, that everything's happening for a reason. It's so much harder. And I thank God that I've been, I believe, in the analogy of the allegory of the cave, Plato's allegory of the cave, I've gone out of the cave and I no longer can go into the cave ignorant. I know what the light's like. And every time I return to the cave, there's no more ignorance in it. There's no more bliss in that ignorance. It's straight pain and suffering and hardship. And I'm grateful for that because I know I will never rest there. And I want rest, so I won't stay there. But it's still hard. It doesn't mean it's easy, and I'll fall more. I'm not wise. I'm a fool, and I still have much to learn. In my naivety, I got out of the cave, and I've really had to test the notions I accepted through naivety recently, and luckily, they've proven right. But unfortunately, they've I've only been able to I've only been able to prove that by forging it in fire, by going to the other side, by experiencing the opposite, by realizing that there's something to this, there's something to the ancient text, there's something to these things that people are saying so long ago. There's something to these things, and to not listen is foolish. Zeno went to the Oracle of Delphi, and she said, "You will become wise when you start listening to dead people, or when you start conversing, start talking to the dead." And Zeno had no idea what that meant till after his shipwreck. He walked past like a lecture, I guess, and someone was talking about Socrates, was reading one of Plato's dialogues with Socrates, and he realized right then and there Socrates has been dead for a long time, but he's conversing with him, and that is where he will become wise. And he asked where he could find a man like that, and just so happened that there was a cynical philosopher. Cynical is much different in this day and age than it was back then. Cynics were actually virtuous, pious people, even though Diogenes did some crazy stuff. Um, and he met a cynic, and Zeno founded Stoicism out of cynicism. And, the rest is history. Doing that which his soul demanded. If Zeno got to Athens and wallowed in his self-pity for losing his fortune, losing his life's work, he never would have became Zeno, the founder of Stoicism. We never would have had an Epictetus. We never would have had a Seneca. We never would have had a Marcus Aurelius. We never would have had a great sect of philosophy that has shaped this earth for 2,500 years. And that all came from one man following his soul's guidance. It all came from one man not giving in to the pleasure for pleasure's sake, to fighting the resistance, to doing that which he knows is right. That's what all the greats have done. That's what all the trailblazers have done throughout history. And I'm not saying each and every one of us needs to be trailblazers. It's a very high percentage chance that we will not be remembered. But that doesn't mean the point is not to be remembered. Posthumous fame is ridiculous, as Marcus Aurelius would tell himself countless times. But that is not why we act virtuous. That is not why we do what we know we must do. We do it for tranquility, for peace of mind, for happiness, for purifying our soul, for being able to go to bed at night and be completely at peace. To, insomnia, some therapists have claimed, the good therapists, the Jungian analysis, they've claimed, like James Hollis would claim that insomnia is just your soul berating you. Everything you refuse to deal with during the day is now coming to you at night. And yes, obviously, that's not every case of insomnia. There's obviously chemical things going on, but who's to say it's not every case of insomnia? Who knows? The soul is a crazy thing, and the placebo effect is real. So to think that your soul doesn't have the power to, give you cancer because you're not living in accordance with your nature is foolish. Is foolish. And I think it's clear when you see people who've gone into remission after being diagnosed and quitting their job and doing that thing that they would say in 3 seconds they know they should be doing. It's clear, it's obvious that there's something to it. There's something to listening to that voice. And to me, that's God. To me, that is all we need. And yeah, sometimes you'll rationally be able to say, the voice is wrong. But you have no idea how wise that voice may be. You have no idea the perspective that voice may have. That voice may be outside of space and time. That voice may know what you must do to get to where you want to go. And maybe that's taking 5 steps back right here. Maybe that's, maybe it's taking 5 steps back. Who's to say it's not what you need to be doing? It might not be what you want to do, but it might be what you need to do. It might not be what you want, but it might be what you need. And I truly just see no other way to live one's life. And it's so trite, it's so obvious. You're telling me I need to do what you're telling me I need to do what I know I need to do. Oh, well, okay, obviously. I mean, I think it's almost kind of trite, but how many of us do? How many of us quit that job that we know we need to quit? How many of us go back to school when we realize there's a degree that we want, there's an area we want to pursue, and that's the direction we have to go into? How many of us, say no to hanging out with that person that we know is degrading us, to not going out to that place that we know vice inhabits and virtue goes nowhere near? How many of us are become willfully blind and just don't even want to see the truth? Let our ignorance be bliss. And in turn, I don't think ignorance is bliss. If 100% is, I used to not think so, but now I see it is. For only the knowledge of your ignorance, only the knowledge of your wrongdoing can make you feel bad. And if you're so ignorant, you're not knowledgeable of your wrongdoing, you will not feel bad. But I think a big thing comes at the end of one's life when they get confronted with morality and they look back on their life. I think everyone does this, and no one confronts morality until it stares them in the face these days. And that's when they can objectively, unbiasedly look at their life and say, I fucked up. They can say, I did not do that, which I knew I should have done. I knew when so and so said this, and I had that opportunity to do that, and I could have gone back and done this, and I should have just went and gone there, and I should have just tried that. That'll come up. And I mean, you might think, oh, well, what's the matter? Say you lived to 81, you made it 80 years in ignorance of bliss. You had 80 years of bliss, but it all gets ruined by the last year. Montaigne would say, the Stoics would say, how you die is a reflection on how you lived. And if you die poorly, if you die wallowing in self-pity, if you die depressed, if you die in that nature, then you lived in that nature. To live well is to die well, and to die well is to have lived well. And you can't die well if you have regrets about not listening to your soul. You can't live well if you're willfully being blind, if you're willfully being ignorant. I don't know what the end of, I don't know what the following seconds after death will be like, but there's the line from King Baldwin in The Kingdom of Heaven where he says, the day, I'm paraphrasing, but the day you come face to face with God, the answer, virtue wasn't convenient at the time, will not suffice. And if we truly do come face to face with a higher being, and he asks us why we did that, truly, it wasn't convenient, will not suffice. And that's not even to say that we'll go to hell because we didn't pursue our dream or this, that, or the other, but what is worse than, what is there a worse hell than realizing you could have been more than you were? Realizing you could have been happier than you were. You could have been at more peace than you were. You could have helped more people than you did. To me, that's hell. I mean, I don't know, I might regret this one day, burning in hell or something, but to me, the body pain is so much more easy to bear than the mental pain, than you know, I can, I've endured much physical pain, self-inflicted. I'm not saying like I try to kill myself or anything, but like, doing sets to failure, cold exposure, heat exposure, wearing minimal layers because I wanted to strengthen my body, so to strengthen my mind. And it's all been so much easier than all the mental things I've done. All the mental, it's not the body that gives out. It's the mind that gives out. If you're here listening to this, then your body has never completely given out on you. But you've stopped much. You've stopped many times because your mind gave out. Because your mind said no more. And yeah, it's good. It does, because we have the thing in us that it's like the thing in the car. The engine can't go to 100%, or it'll blow up. Our body's smart enough to not let us do that. But our body can go further than it lets us without crumbling and destroying. And when you do that, you strengthen the mind immensely. And the mental, we need to strengthen our body for the sole reason that this life in the mental, metaphysical way is way harder than the physical. Immensely harder. Even when you're dealing with physical ailments, it's the mental. It's the mental that's taxing and draining. It's not that pain that's unbearable. It's your idea that the pain is unbearable. It's your idea that the pain will never end. It's the idea that this too will not pass, that destroys your soul, that destroys your capability to endure this event. And this video is a long video for the sole reason that my soul was yearning to express something, because I haven't been listening to myself. I haven't been doing that which I know I should be doing. I haven't been acting virtuously. I have been giving in devices. I have been falling. And Seneca says there's no shame in falling when the path that you are pursuing is steep. When your goal is lofty and you fall short, there's no need for, you know, there's no need to ridicule yourself. Just get back up and keep going. Realize you've fallen and get back up, because you've never truly lost until you quit. A failure is just an attempt that gets you one step closer. And you never truly fail until you quit. And as long as you don't quit, you're fine. And as I said, this video is long because my soul needed to express something. Because I see, as I said, I was naive. I accepted many notions based on the fact that I felt I was stupid. I felt I was unwise, and I had books of wise people, and I thought, who am I to not, who am I to say that this is not right? But then in my own folly, I became wise, and I thought I could, I thought I could cut the corners. I thought I could do away with certain things. I thought I could, you know, make it easier. And in my own wise estimation, I became a fool. And I'm now seeing that the things that I accepted on naivety are truly real. That virtue is enough. That virtue is the only way to the happy life. That if you don't listen to your soul, it will not go well. It will not go well for you. You may be it may be later in life when you come face to face with your own morality, or it may be sooner if you leave the cave of ignorance and you see the light. And if you do that, you can never return to your ignorance. You can never return to your blissful ignorance. You can return to ignorance, but it will no longer be blissful. It will be it will be hell on earth. It'll be torture. For you'll know there is more to life than this. And you'll know that it's you who are stopping it. That it's you who cannot endure. That it's you who is too weak to get back to that position. And I've let trivial things stop pursuits that I know my soul demands for external reasons that I will no longer do, that I no longer can do, for the sole reason that it's degrading my soul. And I hope this video helped you realize that which you need to do. Whatever it is, that's the thing. You know what it is. And you can make excuses for it, but those excuses won't stand up on your deathbed. Those excuses won't stand, when you come face to face with God potentially. And he says, this is who you were supposed to be. Why didn't you become that?